Finally, I finished it. And I'm gonna do my best not to mimic Christian Bale. Alright guys, a quick explanation on the New 52 and why you need it for this particular review. So, Flashpoint happened. I'm not going to get into that, but it rebooted the universe, started from scratch, but Batman didn't really lose it in a particular way. They didn't start from one. It was a weird reboot, but DC does it, and it's a little annoying. Especially nowadays, it seems to happen every 4 to 6 years. But let's get to it. In 2011, let's do a flashback. So, in my younger days, before I had a beard, I was straight out of high school when this was coming out, and my nerdiness could not stay put. So, what I did instead was go to my local comic book shop, and I started picking up, I don't know if you can see that, I started picking up the Batman series. Oh, wrong one. I got the first one up there. I started picking it up because at that time, 2011, was a different time. And Batman was at the precipice. He was at the pinnacle. At that point, the Batman hype was unreal. Unmatched. Nowadays, with the new movie, it's not the glory days, but it was pretty close. I mean, it was amazing at that time. It was amazing. At that time, we had the Arkham games. I believe either the first one just came out and maybe the second one just started coming out, or it was around that time. And the Christopher Nolan movies, we were all waiting for the Christopher Nolan trilogy to end. And you don't know what that happened. And in a funny way, some of what this comic book series did better than the actual movie, if you could believe that. But nevertheless, let's get to it. If you're new to the channel, please hit subscribe. If I can at least get 50 views on this particular review, I will start doing more of my omnibus reviews. Mainly because I'm going to have a lot more time. But nevertheless, let's get into it. So, we start out with Court of Owls. And what a great introduction. What a great new villain for the Batman Rogues Gallery. Because if we all know, Batman has a plethora of so-called villains that mostly everybody knows about. And in the first issue, he annihilates them all. He thinks he knows Gotham like the back of his hand till the Court of Owls get here. And let me tell you what, the Court of Owls was a great little intro. And yes, there's backups, but I'll get into that in a second. So, the Court of Owls was, I'm not going to give spoilers away either. If you're wondering that, I'll give you little details here and there. And with the Court of Owls, it's tied to his family, and it's tied to the history of Gotham. Think of them as the Illuminati of Gotham City. And with Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, they start introducing us to this. And a little context for y'all. So with Scott Snyder, he was brand new. He just did Black Mirror. And he was doing American Vampire. Both are great, especially Black Mirror. Oh my god. Maybe one day I'll do a quick little review for Black Mirror, because that deserves attention as well. But Greg Capullo, I didn't even know about this. He was getting hate for jumping on this series, which I don't understand. And that hate was wrong. And if you were on that pile, you were wrong. He ended up being one of my favorite artists. And my god, sir. He was the true all-star of this series. He did not miss. This was the one point where he did not miss. And great duo. They had a great. This is like Dr. Dre and Eminem. This is like 50 Cent and Eminem. This was a duo that only come every now and then. But as I get to it, Court of Owls, it was a great introduction to this series, and I ended up loving Batman more after reading this. But I'm not gonna lie with y'all. This is a review, so it's not all fun and giggles. I didn't like the way it ended. It kind of felt a little rushed, a little bit. I don't know. It didn't land with me as well as other people. Maybe because there's a twist ending, but they kind of leave it ambiguous, which never gets... I feel like it never got resolved well. And that was my second problem, like, rereading this series. Like, Death of the Family, I loved as a kid, but now that I'm older and I've read so much stuff, I feel like Death of the Family didn't really... It had... I'm not gonna lie with y'all. It had some of the best moments, best Joker moments I can remember in recent memory. With him invading the GCPD to take back his face because it got cut off in Detective Comics, not here, in Detective Comics. And that he was truly terrifying in this series. And this is more of a horror-themed type of story. Like, this series has a horror aesthetic to it, and I think that's what separates and makes it so unique compared to the other runs, because it gives a gravitas to what this story is, and it gives it a little bit of grit to it as well, especially when it comes to the art and the layouts, especially with the Court of Owls one, where you have to like move the issue to like read it, which was a truly unique experience, especially if you're reading it for the first time. But Death in the Family was supposed, I guess, it was supposed to end the way Batman and his family are, but I feel like it didn't bring it home as well as he wanted it to be. There were good themes throughout, but I feel like he didn't stick the landing in that one. And he introduced themes towards the end that weren't there earlier, so it wasn't as satisfying. But it was still decent. But the journey to there was banger, 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 banger. And that leads me to 0 Year. 0 Year has to be my absolute favorite standout of all the arcs in here. 0 Year shows the origin, it retells the origin of Batman, and we get a lot of homages to past Batman artists, with Greg Capullo doing it. This is my most favorite origin story for Batman. If you ask me, I'm going to recommend you this one. During 0 Year, there are really a lot of parallels to the way Batman begins. There are also straight up references, even shots that are similar to the Christopher Nolan films throughout this whole entire series, which was very well done. I actually wish that the movies took more from this series, because it actually fixed a lot of problems that the movies had, especially The Dark Knight Rises. So Riddler was the main villain in this, and Batman was barely starting. And Riddler wasn't the only villain. We had the Red Hood Gang, which, if you fellow comic book readers know, and for those who are not and aren't comic book readers and like my channel as well, the Red Hood Gang, that is Joker becoming Joker. Batman essentially kind of made him, but they switched it up in here, which I really did like. This moment right here, whenever he meets Joker and he creates him, and you're not sure if it's him, but the way he acts, so chaotic, it just reminds you straight up of Joker, especially from the Dark Knight movie. And not only doing tributes or homages to other movies, but it also does it to other comics, like The Killing Joke, the way Joker was created in that storyline. It is almost directly the same way as it is done in this series. And because this was like its own little pocket in the universe of DC at that time, I feel like Scott Snyder had a lot of room to breathe and do things that other writers can't really do especially in this particular time that we are in now. So that gave him free reign to tell a full story his own way. And I know a lot of people don't like his run, which I don't agree with you. Before I go on a tangent again, because my ADD is kicking in. 0 Year had Riddler, and Riddler... Actually, the riddles in here were way, way harder than what they were in the movie. With the whole justice, I call that one, he lies still. Like, I feel like Batman wasn't that smart in the movie, which this comic book series kind of like changed my opinion on the movie as well. But we get into that debate in the comments. But yeah, 0 Year was a great and new way to show off how Batman becomes Batman and what it means to be Batman. And that's what this theme overall through this whole entire series seems to be based on, is the mantle of Batman, the responsibility and weight, and why Bruce Wayne is the only one to become Batman. Endgame is the next one, and absolutely I really enjoyed it, but there are some leaps in logic that I did not agree with, or that were kind of like make you question it, especially with the whole Joker aesthetic, because so in Death of the Family, that was supposed to be like a love type of thing with Batman and Joker. Now this is a hate of Batman, and he wanted to tear down Batman to his core because he was not holding back anymore, if you can believe that. He was full on hatred for Batman. And there are some leaps and bounds towards the whole logic of the story, but that doesn't take away that this was an entertaining read. Joker had got a hold of the Justice League to go after Batman, and what an incredible fight that truly was. I was here for it. But whenever they introduced Joker in that little twist, really didn't make that much sense, or maybe I should have reread it, but I did, and I didn't understand it that well, or it didn't land the way it did. But I feel like after 0 Year, the writing became a lot more efficient, except for this little hiccup right here. So in Endgame, we get, it's basically the Joker. Even Batman has to ally himself with the villains at the time to save Gotham from Joker, because Joker is no holds bar anymore. He does not care, and he needs everybody's help. Even the family comes back to help. And with that being said, we get some of the best panels and layouts in any Batman story I have read. And it was truly gorgeous. It's truly badass. This is sort of like a metal magazine coming to life. The artwork was firing on all cylinders, especially towards the end with that fight with Joker. I absolutely loved it. It was just, they were not holding back with each other. And I'm going to end it there because I don't want to spoil anything for y'all, but after the events of that, we get the super heavy or heavy metal, something like that. Gordon picks up the mantle as Batman as Bruce Wayne is gone. And for me, I wasn't really digging it at first because I was like, well, it kind of felt like it ended, but not in a nice little bow. But to be honest, it wasn't about Gordon. The story wasn't about Gordon. It was still about Bruce Wayne and Batman. That's all I'm going to say because I don't want to give too much away. But we got a new introduction to a new character, Mr. Bloom. Because Gordon has to become Batman and he needs his own villain to fight. And Bloom was that guy. And yes, there was... The suit that he had was kind of like a bunny with the bunny ears. And they do acknowledge it. But that doesn't stop it from being great. This was actually a really nice story that I genuinely thought it was great. And I feel like if you overlook this, or if you stop reading because Bruce Wayne is no longer in the mantle, that's like leaving a movie at the beginning of the third act. Because that's what it feels like. It's the beginning of the third act. And when we get the momentous return, it's a pretty much a hell yeah, without giving too much. And I know there's like the graveyard shift. I think in the trades, that's what they describe it as. That was when we get some of the short stories. And for me, this is where it feels like it slogs. But speaking of slogs, so I read the whole entire thing because I had the omnibuses. I did read the backup stories. A lot of them. This is where some of my issues with the whole series are. Towards the beginning, they were pretty good. But I guess towards like, especially during Endgame, they were a bit slow. No, they weren't. They were slow. They were slow, and it kind of killed the momentum at some points of the story, and that it just felt like I was just kind of like, it felt like homework. It felt like I didn't want to read this, but I was just reading it just for the review. I was reading it because at some points it just didn't feel like it fit. So would I recommend reading the backups? Maybe for the first two, if you're really interested in more details of the story. For the first half, you could read it. The other one was Death of the Family. That was a good standout after, and maybe some of them from 0 year, but after that, don't bother, or don't even bother to begin with. So I would have to dock it a little for that. And the graveyard shift, I can't say there was like, and even the annuals, they were great as well. Especially the Mr. Freeze and Batman trying to find out who that serial killer was were actually some of the standouts to the annuals. And as well with the graveyard shift and the stories that we got that were like kind of filler that were ties to the Eternal stuff, which I wasn't a big fan of. But overall, they were pretty good. Especially the Brian Azzarello one, which had a great little... It had like one of these single issues that really felt very sci-fi-ish, where like they kind of show a mirror to what's happening in real life, but not by actually saying it. So it's kind of like subtle. And then whenever it picks back up with the whole Gordon stuff, that was whenever it was firing on all cylinders. I think with them doing that, it kind of felt like whenever we get the return of Batman, we get that full hoorah. And that's what I really enjoyed. And towards the end, with especially the way they wrapped this up, especially in the last issue, James Tynion seemed like he was going to be the new guy for... That's what it felt like, that they were prepping James Tynion to write Batman, but we all know Tom King ended up picking up after that. And the way James Tynion wrote the ending to this series, I feel like he stuck the landing beautifully. That ending with the whole Alfred in the book and Batman not wanting the thief to steal that one book, how it wasn't particular for money or villains or his secret identity. It was a very personal moment. And a lot of personal moments happen in this series, which is why I absolutely enjoyed and loved this series, even though for its flaws. Because moments like those, like the whole Damian... So in one point in this, Damian dies, and there's an issue where he has to fight Clayface. And we get this little juxtaposition of how both of them were working together, and then how he passed, and how he's dealing with that anger and grief. And we get this small little moment where Bruce and Alfred are just going back through the video logs of him interacting with his son. Moments like those are what make me solidify this as one of my favorite Batman reads of all time. So that's going to bring me to the end of this video and to my ranking. I'm not a numbers guy, not good at math either, so I'm going to go with Fire. And I know the way my channel works is a little different, so Fire is about an 8 to a 9-ish. Depending. Straight Fire, that's like a 9. Totally worth it. I absolutely love it. Worth checking out. If you're hesitant on reading it, despite the flaws, this might not sell you on it, but for those who did enjoy it, please let me know down in the comments below if you enjoyed it as much as I did. And if you're new to the channel, I would love to do more of these, so please share with anybody. Y'all enjoy the rest of your day. Deuces, y'all, and keep loving more Batman.